All right, so getting back into the Phil M. Jones, exactly what to say in real estate stuff, picking up kind of where we left off last week, but I also want to share some progress and some practice and some things I've been playing with on the exactly what to say question trees to build in order to be more prepared with going into utilizing this. Okay. Remember, the 4 cornerstones are: the worst time to think about what you're saying is when you're saying it, meaning get prepared ahead of time. I've been practicing this cornerstone since we got back from Dallas, meaning before every important meeting, including the one that I had this morning at 8:30 a.m. to talk to a lead that Ryan and I were just talking about a little bit ago, was to have a question tree ready so that it can spark conversation. We can find out more context and deeper reasons for why people are contemplating doing what they're doing, so that then we can also insert and help them make decisions and showcase our value at the same time. Okay. Number 2 cornerstone is curiosity is the fuel for great conversations. So just staying curious and open to understand and learn without judgment. Number 3, people do things for their own reasons, not yours. So even though I might think something is best for somebody, it doesn't matter what I think. It's what matters to that person is what matters most. Okay. So when you're, giving them suggestions, when you're bringing things together, it's like, because of the fact that you told me X, Y, and Z during my Phil Jones questioning, I think that, you have 3 options. Here's what those options look like. Also, Phil Jones stuff. So it's like, how to start putting this stuff together is really coming forward. And it's most important to make sure that when you're presenting these options, it's what is important to them. And because of the fact that they said X, Y, and Z, this is why I'd recommend X, Y, and Z, because, well, this is what you told me is important to you. And it's okay if that changes. We'll just pivot. Number 4 cornerstone, the person asking the questions controls the conversation. So when somebody asks a question, I have a very ingrained habit of just answering the question. So I've been practicing zipping my lip when somebody asks a question. And I've been practicing responding to questions with a question. And that might sound rude. That might sound weird. That might sound uncomfortable. I've been practicing a lot, and people are finding it actually very helpful. So my preconceived interpretation or assumptions were it was going to be messing up conversations. And it's funny. Like, people are asking questions. When I ask a question in return, I'm not asking a question that's like off in left field. I'm asking a question to qualify and understand better why they're asking and what they're really asking. Okay. So when somebody asks me, like, what can you sell my house for? What has you interested in selling your house? See how I just turned that around by answering a question with a question, but it's a question so that I can more qualify and figure out how I can be of assistance. I'm not trying to be rude, and I'm not trying to dodge answering their question. I need more information so that I can give them an answer that is curious, well, curiously asking, but then people do things for their own reasons. So back to cornerstone 3, so that I can give them information that's applicable to what they want to know. I had the bad habit of people would, what's going on in the market, of course, well, what do you mean, which part of the market? And then I start spewing all kinds of data, facts, figures, and blah, blah. None of that matters to that person unless they're thinking about what those data and figures have to do with. And if I don't apply it to what it means to them, then it doesn't mean anything to them anyways. Big waste of time. So slowing down to be prepared, building a question tree ahead of time, has been saving me a truckload of time interviewing clients and figuring out what's most important to them and being able to insert value and earn trust of clients. And it's like literally this is like adding fuel. Versi and I were talking about this a little bit yesterday. So like we have our home buyer workshop, we have our listing workshops. Those are meant to build value and earn trust so that people realize there's a lot more to this than they might have known. And this is why we're the best for them to work with. Those workshops have been working like a charm. And I would say that, we're like at a 95 to 100% success rate using those when we use the tools. Yeah.
Yep.
And when Versi and I were talking yesterday, I was sharing with him how I started using these question trees as like, I've added this in as another part of the process. So when I'm first talking to a lead to have an initial conversation, I'm busting out a question tree that's already been pre-built, that I've already pre-made. And I'm going through those questions, just like I shared with you guys last week, the practice stuff. Well, I put it into action. One of them in particular was for, it was supposed to be the remainder of a home buyer workshop that I couldn't finish the first time. Okay. Spent an hour with these people on the home buyer workshop, and I got like maybe a third of the way through. Still need to go 2/3 of the way to finish with them because they had a lot of questions and we had a lot of interaction getting to know each other. Well, the next time I met with them was to finish the home buyer workshop, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to build a Phil M. Jones question tree, which I shared last week. And I used it actually, no, it wasn't for that one. It's for a different one. But anyways, I used it with them. We were in together for an hour and a half. But in that hour and a half, I didn't even need the home buyer workshop anymore, except for one slide, because it wasn't covered in the question tree. And throughout doing the question tree, earn their trust, earn their relationship. They're searching for properties. We have the home buyer education steps scheduled, and like we're locked in. Okay. Using this is now cementing deeper trust and relationship earlier in the game, to where now they're like not even interested in interviewing other people. Like that's where I'm going with this. Like this is how important this has become.
Right.
Where now the question tree is now my initial consultation. Okay. So initial consultation or initial speaking with the client, right into question tree. It's provoking and giving me all kinds of context and information that's important to the client. And then I'm turning around and using value add, value prop, things that we would use from our presentations to sprinkle in throughout the conversation. And it really has been like, it's gone to now 100% success rate on earning every client I want to work with. Like it's already working that way, and I'm not even good at it yet. So I want to get into, I guess, really the question tree that I had for the person this morning that I called. So this person is a firefighter paramedic. Wife works at UCSF. They both commute to the city. They live in Bay Point. They're thinking about selling and buying in the city, or selling and buying out in the, Oakley, Brentwood area to get into better schools and a bigger home. But now they saw the prices of what they could buy in San Francisco. And now they're like, ooh, I have options. I have choices. Well, using the question tree, let me pull it up. First, I got to know him, hey, remind me again, why you're interested in doing this. And he told me his story, why they wanted to move. One of my questions was, who do you know that's recently sold their home? I just want to kind of know. And he's like, well, I know that my across the street neighbor just bought a home, but I really don't know anybody who's actually just sold their home recently. Okay, great. I'm just asking to be curious because, and I tell the people too, I'm just trying to understand where you're at so that I know where to, add to it to help you understand options and how things can affect you in a great way. And, not be redundant and tell you things that you already know, and the cool thing is it's making a better use of our time. In fact, I'm going to pull up share screen. All right, can you guys see that? Okay, that picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. This is the 4 cornerstones at the top, the worst time to think about something, and then rejection-free openings. When we're doing the Phil Jones exactly what to say workbook that we're going to work through together, it starts and it puts everything in order. Number one, first understanding the 4 cornerstones that I shared with you at the beginning, but also it starts in order of how to use these questions and how to build a question tree. So number one is, I'm not sure if it's for you, but. So one of the most common reasons I hear from people as to why they fail to introduce their idea, product, or service to others is the fact that they're fearful of rejection they might receive. They don't even want to start. Okay. So the reason for I'm not sure if it's for you, but is essentially it's designed as the best place to start with the magic set of words you can use to introduce something to just about anybody at any point in time that is completely rejection free. The words are, I'm not sure if it's for you, but, and let's take a moment to understand, opening statements with the words, I'm not sure if it's for you, causes the listener, their subconscious brain to hear there's no pressure here. By suggesting they may not be interested, you're naturally increasing their intrigue where they're like, wait, I want to determine if this is for me or not.
Right.
Okay. What's more, it fires internal drivers that tells them a decision needs to be made, and the soft approach ensures this decision feels unpressured and internal. The real magic, though, is delivered by the 3-letter word of its sequence, the word that typically should be avoided in all conversations, but, because usually but negates everything that you said before it. Imagine receiving a comment from your employer that the word says, and the words are, you know that you're a really valuable member of the team. We love everything you do here, but some things need to change. Not a fun one to hear, right?
Right.
A rejection-free outcome is, one of 2 things happening. Your listener leans in and asks for more information because they're personally interested, or the very worst case scenario, they say they'll give it some thought. Okay. So some examples on using, I'm not sure if it's for you, but I'm not sure if it's for you, but we're hosting an open house this weekend and thought you might benefit from stopping by. So like your door knocking, that could be your rejection-free opener because, I thought you might benefit from stopping by. People can decide for themselves if they want to, if they don't want to, but you're not trying to sell them anything. Let's see. In real estate.
And part of the purpose, guys, is to really kind of stoke their curiosity with something like this, right? Like Michael's example was, hey, we're having an open house, wanted to invite you. You guys might you want to follow up with something that might be intriguing because you want them to ask a question. You don't want them to have all the ammunition or all the information to make a decision as to what they're going to do and when they're going to do it. You want to just pique their interest. And then the goal is to get them to ask you a question like, oh, well, when is it? Or what's going on? Or like, why did you think of me? Or why would this be beneficial? Or something along those lines.
I like it.
Yep. And going a bit in depth on this. So where I'm going with this is part of our practice with learning this is building a question tree for any situation, building a question tree to go into any conversation ready with questions to provoke really good conversation. Starting with these in order, I'm not sure if it's for you, but we're going to get into a little bit of practice on that one. And then each time we go into this, we want to go into another one. Open-minded, what do you know? Open fact question, so that we can build on this to eventually get at least 1 through 18. 1 through 18 built is like our first baseline foundation for generating meaningful conversations, building question trees to go into presentations or opportunities or lead call with the ability to get more and better information and be able to take it somewhere. There's still a ton more that's going to take months and months for us to get really good at. But already with this practice of building a question tree of 1 through 18, so you can see on the screen, those are all the things to start with the question, but then you got to add in what's applicable to that situation or what's a good baseline to start with to get conversation going. It took me about 30 to 45 minutes to build questions 1 through 18 when I was trying to first practice this. Yesterday, before a meeting that actually before we had to go on Monday, 4 minutes is all it took me to build a question tree before going into an appointment. So from 30 to 40 minutes down to 4 minutes just from practicing this every day before every opportunity. It's like that fast once it clicks and you can just roll with it. Okay. We're not going to be there yet, but that's where we're going. So I'm not sure if it's for you, but first one. So for instance, one that I made from a question tree. I'm not sure if it's for you, but we commonly help people sell for bigger profits by doing repairs or upgrades. Would you be open-minded to seeing what those options look like? I'll tell you what, you get an answer 100% of the time, and I purposely made, would you be open-minded to seeing what those options look like? I actually took rejection-free opening 1 and number 2, open-minded. See, number 2 is open-minded on the list. Would you be open-minded or how open-minded are you to these things? This literally has triggered opening questions or an answer that gives me permission to continue the conversation. So the whole point of these rejection-free openings, by the way, is to start a conversation and start gaining some permission to continue a conversation. So instead of, hey, I'm calling to follow up, hey, I'm calling to check in, hey, this might not be for you. Getting started into a conversation like that, again, I'm not sure if it's for you, but we commonly help people sell for bigger profits by doing repairs or upgrades. Would you be open-minded to seeing what those options look like? That's my seller one. Another.
I like that.
I'm not sure if it's for you, but the most profitable deals are homes that nobody else wants. Just, you got to open it with another question. How open-minded would you, or how open-minded are you at taking on projects that need a lot of work, like the last one we looked at? You know, that was the people that I met with last week.
Well, we were in Dallas, guys. He had us send out text messages as practice, and some of the best results were from folks who were very vague with their "I'm not sure if it's for you," but and then they did a number of different things, but it could be as simple as reaching out to somebody that God, maybe they own a house, maybe they don't own a house, maybe they're thinking about selling, maybe. It could just be a cool house that got you thinking of them. And you say, hey, I know I'm not sure if it's for you, but ran across this property, thought of you, send them a picture. And the reactions were, and this is what you want. Well, where's that at? How much is that? How big's the yard? Or, it doesn't have to be loaded. It can be. And the more context you have within the conversation, the more loaded these things can be. But if you're simply trying to open up the conversation and get things moving, then being vague is really very powerful because it does exactly what you want it to do. It incites curiosity, it gets a response, and the response that you want is one that they don't have to think about hard. It's almost like a knee jerk reaction, right? Like somebody walks by you in the street and say, hey, how's it going? Oh, it's going good. How are you? It's a knee jerk reaction, right? Like you don't have to think about these things, but that's your permission to kind of get going. And the big thing about all of this stuff, and Michael, you still got the thing on the screen here, you can see how things are framed and summarized. You get your rejection free openings, and then you've got perspective changes. Well, you can't change perspective unless you know what the perspective is. The whole goal with all of this, with this entire framework, is to get a conversation going. And then once you have that conversation going, you're grabbing bits and pieces of information to form context. And then once you have context, then you could decide whether or not you need to change a perspective, not to fit your agenda, but to get them to think in a way that allows them to make a decision that's truly beneficial for them. And without knowing the context to how they're thinking and why it's important, then you can't do anything. All we're doing is just talking. We need to have meaningful conversations. And that's the purpose behind all of this, is to put more purpose and more meaning behind the conversations that we're having so that you can help people get to the answers that they seek. Not the answers that you want, it's the answers that they seek. And a lot of the times, we get in our own way as people and as agents. Well, we can talk ourselves in and out of a lot of different things. We can cloud our mind with thoughts and questions and all kinds of things that really cloud our judgment. So this is really a tool to help people get to the answers that they need in a way that's helpful.
Yeah.
And not pressuring and not, it's calculating, right? But it's not calculating for your purpose, it's for theirs.
Yeah. And in fact, that reminds me of some notes that I was just looking at. Practice strategic questions. Ask clarifying questions. Practice not giving advice. And after practicing questions, usually the person will respond with, oh, I know what to do. That's like when you get to master level, where you're literally just asking questions. And this is something I also learned in the coaching training, is asking questions and asking empowering questions so that the person that you're interviewing, the person that you're speaking with, can find the answers from within. Building these question trees and using these
Thank you, Lord.
every single time has resulted in clients going, wow, you asked really good questions. I didn't really think about that before. That's the best time to pause and listen and let them find the answers. And then wait for that gold to come out, because the things that they're going to share with you are incredibly important to them. And it's going to help drive, better conversations. So like this one this morning, as just like more examples. Who do you know that's recently sold their home? Another opening fact question. So opening fact question is opening with something that is factual, mutually agreeable, and then a very easy to answer question. So somebody that we met with the other day, it looks like you bought your home November 2015 for 300,000. Have you done any work to it over the years? People can very easily know whether they've done work to their home or not since they've owned it. Simple question, but I just want to get them talking. I just want to get them moving. Okay. Not asking overly technical questions. And that's part of the practice of the opening fact question on number 4 there. What do you understand? So this is somebody who is selling and buying. What do you understand about selling one home and buying another? I just want to know, what do they understand? Because I want to understand, like, what's their experience been like? And in fact, that's my next question. What is your experience with buying and selling real estate? I get all kinds of great answers from people, and they'll start telling stories about what their experiences were like with the professionals. And I'll even ask them, what is your experience working with a real estate professional? And they give me all kinds of information. What did they love about it? What did they not like about it? What worked for them? What didn't work for them? It's giving me the roadmap of what to do and what not to do in order to serve them in a way that they want to be served.
When it's when you really start breaking these things down, you're going to hear us say question tree, question tree over and over again. And all question trees is kind of like a simulated conversation that gives you the roadmap. Not totally in advance, but you need to understand where you can take these things. So Michael's point of, or example of, opening fact question with the guy that he called this morning. Opening could be, hey, this is Michael Gordon with E3 Realty. Looks like you talked with Ryan last night, and it sounds like you guys are thinking about selling your house. That's the fact. The question is what has you interested in selling and moving out to the city, or whatever he framed it as? And
That's
now he's going to
exactly
get,
fast.
and now he's going to get a lot of information. Okay. And it doesn't have to be, and it shouldn't be, a linear approach to these conversations where you go open fact question and then right into what do you understand. But you could take bits and pieces of what his or her response is, and then you start to dig in a little bit deeper. Example, what do you understand about selling one home and buying another at the same time? Well, there's only really 2 core responses. He's either done it or he hasn't. And if he hasn't, he may know somebody that has, or he doesn't. So if he has done it, then you're going to ask him about that experience. Why? Because you want to know what his perspective is. Was this an easy process? Was this a crazy process? Was this a stressful process? Is this a process that's keeping him up at night already? Is he genuinely curious about the process? Does he have people that are close to him, friends or family that are in real estate that do this all the time, and it's a piece of cake? You're going to get perspective. And then once you have that perspective, then you can work on nurturing that perspective in a way that's helpful to him, right? So I asked him the same question yesterday, and I know Michael did this morning. He's never done this before, right? But if he had told you, I've done this 1,000 times, okay, well, now you know that he's probably got some ideas on how this is supposed to go. And now you're already equipping yourself with, okay, cool. Let me gauge whether or not this person has an accurate beat on what's going on right now. Right. So it's such a powerful framework. And I know Versi and I talked about the framework last week. The framework is as basic as it gets, but it can be so incredibly advanced if you really take the time. And once you do, it becomes so powerful, because the conversations, like Michael said, they become questions. And when you're asking questions, you're in control of the conversation. And when you're asking questions, you are playing the role of that consultant and putting yourself in a position where you're really viewed as a professional. You're not pushy, you're not closing, all you're doing is guiding. And that is the best place to be.
Bingo. Exactly. And he did teach us these in sequence because he wants us to get used to using these in this sequential form. Is a great way to build a conversation and have it not be awkward, bouncing around to different things. But as you get good at this, to Ryan's point, you may not need to do, I'm not sure it's for you, but open-minded, who do you know, open fact question. You might just go right into an open fact question, which is what I did this morning. And just like what Ryan said, it opened up the conversation. And then is when I got into, who do you know that's recently done X? So I started with number 4, then I went to number 3, and then I went into open-minded, and then I went into who do you understand, what is your experience, how certain are you, when was the last time, how important is it, could it be possible? That's when I went into the further questions in sequential order, but only because I've had enough practice to start playing with this at different places. So for now, just getting used to building a question tree is a great place to start, because it's really game changing on being able to actually use it and have it make sense and not just be like a one-off question here and there. Granted, the one-off questions are still better than not asking the question at all. Okay.
Right.
So it's going to be super messy at first. And I know we're already, out of time, overtime today. So I'm thinking, Rye Guy, because as I was looking back through my notes, how Phil started with, the 4 cornerstones and understanding the 4 cornerstones and the framework. And then, writing it, performing it, editing it. I'm wondering if we should, be more into that foundational piece the next few days, or shall we just keep going with, I'm not sure if it's for you, but practice with that. And then the next day, open-minded. What are your thoughts on that?
A few things. I think that this is all new to us, and even though we're practicing it,
Yeah.
it's brand new. And Versa and I were talking about this last week, and I shared with him that we may want to slow things down a little bit so that we can really grasp it, understand it, and then teach it the right way. And he brought up an interesting point, which was there's a lot of instances where you get that 50,000-foot view, and none of it makes sense the way that it should at first. But there's things that will stick, and there's things that you will recognize. There will be moments where you say, oh, and then all of a sudden there's an application that makes sense. So
Mhm.
I think the 50,000-foot view is good. I think slowing some things down. Hold on one second. I'm getting a call from our guy on Gregory for Terry Ann.
That's okay.
Did my phone cut out while I was
No,
saying any of
yeah,
that?
you're still
Okay,
good.
good. So I think slowing some pieces down, but I also think maybe giving them an example of a start to finish question tree with an example that makes sense
Mhm.
in everyday real estate life, may
Okay.
be a little bit more of that 50,000-foot view,
Mhm.
and then we can come back to the whys behind a lot of these, the 32
Mhm.
parts of the framework,
Yep.
really kind of building on the 4 cornerstones slowly, but then diving into each one of these, just like Phil did,
Mhm.
individually. But I think zoom out, give them an example or 2, and then maybe we can add to those every time we meet. And then
Mhm.
once we go through those examples quick, then we kind of come back to, one part of the framework and dive in a little bit.
Okay, perfect. We could
I
definitely.
think that would be helpful, but definitely open to others and how they're thinking.
Yeah. What Versi and Harpreet, um, what part of this is resonating with you so far?
You know what? What comes to my mind is that this is exactly what I need, because I need to have real estate conversations that bring value to the person I'm talking to. And I think this is exactly the framework in the thought process that leads to that consistently. So I really like everything that is bringing. And like Ryan was saying, I want to get as much information as possible. And as I continue to practice these things and we continue to go through it, then it'll start to stick and come together, and then it'll all click eventually. But I like it when I get all of that information, even though some of it may be over my head at the time. As I continue to do the work, oh man, it starts to click, and you'd be like, oh yeah, that's what he's talking about. Now I see how it comes together. Now I see what you're talking about. And now, because it clicked and you have some real life application, you're able to utilize that and take it to another level, as well. So that's what I like. And I gave Ryan an example when we were talking about how that has worked for me in the past. Is one of the ladies, when I first started going to church, I started going to the prayer ministry. I gravitated to that because I didn't know how to pray. So she gave us a ton of information, and it was just all over my head. I didn't understand none of it, but I showed up every Wednesday for the class and everything. And now as time went on, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years later, all of that stuff that she was teaching us way back when that I didn't understand, now I understand it. Now it clicks because I've stayed in it. So that's how I really appreciate the value of getting valuable information, even when I don't completely understand everything, because it allows me to ask questions too about what I don't understand. How does that work?
Perfect. Harpreet, how about you?
I like how framing the beginning, how, especially how you did it. You used like a couple of the questions to make the sentence, the opening.
Perfect. So like seeing those examples of different question trees and how we would use these is making it easier for it to make sense.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I'm literally practicing these question trees multiple times every day, all day. So we'll have
On our
maybe
last
more to
call,
practice with.
sorry, Michael, didn't mean to cut you off. On our last call, Michael got a call from an agent who wrote an offer on behalf of his clients for one of our listings. And we ended our call kind of teeing up, maybe going through a question tree that was very, I guess it was appropriate based off of what we had just heard him discuss with Wally. So context, and then I actually wrote out a question tree. I don't know if you guys want to see it over the next, few minutes before we close out, but I think it's cool to see the start to finish. And by no means is this exactly how these conversations go, but it's kind of a simulation and it's practice. And the whole intent is to get your mind to start working in ways that it isn't trained to do so yet. So context, the call was with Wally. Wally was an agent who wrote an offer on one of our listings. We gave Wally a direct counter. And that direct counter was a result of probably many conversations that Michael had with him and others, like he does so well. It got him to the point where he can say, okay, I think we have a deal here. We're going to give you direct counter at terms that we feel are pretty fair and based on our conversation, probably agreeable. So we gave him that straight counter before the holiday, maybe July 2nd? No, prior to July 4th was Tuesday. They gave them the direct counter probably Friday before the weekend, before the holiday. Crickets, nothing over the weekend. He may have gotten a little bit of feedback that suggested the buyers were out of town on vacation, understandable, and that he'll reach back out when they get back into town. Well, the call that came in while we were doing this was Wally basically saying, these people are spooked. They've talked to friends and family. They are not even sure they want to buy a house in their market or in this market right now. And they're just going to pull out and sit. Okay. So the question tree that, and see if I can share my screen. The question tree that I formed was for this, right? And like Michael said earlier, the practice is when you're starting off to go through these things one by one, right down the line, right? Don't skip around. Don't try to play out this conversation in a way that, you know, that makes sense in real life. Just as a practice, go through it start to finish. Okay. So I'm not sure it's for you, but this is me, Wally, talking to my clients that got the straight counter. Not sure if it's for you, but hey, we got a counter on the offer we wrote for Paddle Lane. How open to strengthening your offer to win might you be? Right. And then, you know, we can pretend the answer might be, well, I don't know. You know, I feel like we gave him a pretty good offer to begin with. Right. That's kind of like the line that I'm going with.
Mhm.
So the response as an agent might be, well, you know, who do you know that's recently purchased a home in a competitive market like ours? And the answer might be, oh, my brother just bought and he paid way less than list price, or maybe nobody. Those are kind of like some possible responses. So the open fact question that I would come back with might be, you know, one thing's for sure is that negotiating can be nerve-wracking, but it's a part of the process. And how would you feel if you knew exactly what it would take to win the bid, to win the house, to win the offer? Well, yeah, pretty non-negotiable. Like negotiating can be tough. That is a mutually agreeable fact. It is a part of the process. We're going to have to get through negotiations to get to what we want. And yeah, God, if I knew exactly what it would take, I may not like what it would take, but at least I would know and I could say yes or no. So then the next question is, what do you understand about the offer counter process when buying a home? Now, let's make no mistake. If we're just asking these questions at this point, we probably haven't done a very good job of understanding who our client is. Because if you're writing offers and getting direct counters and you don't know if they're a first-time home buyer or if they've gone through this process before, I've probably missed the boat in a few different ways. But for purposes of the example, what do you know about the process, this negotiation process? You know what? We've been through it once or twice, but it's been a long time. Okay. What is your experience with negotiating on, you know, on homes or other large purchases, maybe in a recent market? You know, it's not something we do every day. Gotcha. Okay. How certain are you? And maybe I guess as I'm reading this, one of the things Phil says is write it, perform it, and edit it. But you can't do all things at the same time, right? So as I'm
Right.
presenting it, I'm like, oh, I want to edit this. Nope, I'm just going to read it. We can edit it later.
Mhm.
Good.
How certain are you? So I guess the response I'm thinking is I'm pretty familiar with negotiations, and you know, I'm thinking that this counter, if they're asking me to come up in price, this is the context. If they're asking me to come up in price, I'm not really into that, right? Like I'm kind of feeling like with rates going up, prices are going to come down. I may want to wait for a better deal. How certain are you that prices will come down and you'll get a better deal if you wait? I'm not too certain, is what you're really looking for, right? You want to cast some doubt there. When was the last time you felt like you were making a smart, well-informed decision? And how important is it that you find a house that works for you and your family at a fair price within the next few months? Now, it's pretty important. back to Michael. Well, how important, right? You want
Scale it.
a level here. You want to scale it. Right? Is this really important or is it just kind of important? It's really important. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1, 10, 10. Okay, this is really, really okay, great. Could it be possible that agreeing to this counter saves you time, saves you money, and gives you peace of mind? Yeah, that's possible. Okay, well, how would you feel if you were able to move your family in and get settled before the summer ended? I'd feel pretty good. Okay, just imagine starting school, celebrating the holidays, creating new memories. If I can work with the lender to make sure everything is within your budget and the timeline has you moved in before the end of summer, then are we happy to sign this counter? Yes, no. Okay, well, when would be a great time to go over the details with you and the lender? I'm guessing you haven't gotten around to talk. So it's
I
kind of
love
funny
this.
when you say it, right? But you're now assuming that they've said, yeah, we should probably get on the phone with the lender. Cool. And then now it's a follow-up call or a text. Hey, I'm guessing you haven't gotten around to doing that yet. You know it hasn't happened. This is just your cue to like bump things again.
Mhm.
Guessing you haven't gotten around to talking to the lender. Oh yeah, no, let me do that right now. Okay. And then it comes back to, hey, these are your three options. First option would be to dig in your heels, reject the counter and hope that somebody else doesn't strengthen their offer enough to beat you out. Second option would be to pull out of negotiations to pursue another property that may or may not come to the market at a price that may or may not be higher than our countered price during a market time that may have higher rates than today. Or you could take control, all but guarantee that you can finish this move before the summer and settle in with certainty as it relates to your family's home and budget. So the idea, and we'll dive deep into this, but your three options, you want your first option to be
Horse.
The worst, the
Yeah.
ugliest.
you want it to be the ugliest. Second option, kind of the status quo. And then the third option is what you want to steer them towards, right? Two types of people, those that want to buy cheap and those that understand value.
Ooh, I like
Right.
that.
All right. I don't want to be the guy that buys cheap. That sounds terrible. I'd rather be the guy that understands value. And understanding value could be buying cheap, right? But value holds a little bit more oomph. I bet you're a bit like me. You probably like making decisions that make sense, seem fair, and you feel good about.
I love that.
Okay, so now you're loading things up with, look, I understand you want to make decisions that make sense for you, right? I don't want to make you make a decision that doesn't make sense. We're on the same team. We make decisions that seem fair. All right, well, it's tough to argue fair, right?
Yeah.
If it's fair and you don't agree, then what does that make you? Unfair? People don't want to be unfair, and everybody wants to feel good about the decision. Simple swaps. Should we review our options in a quick and easy way via Zoom, or should we take the time to go over this in person? Don't worry, it's normal to be a bit nervous at this point, but I've been through this hundreds, if not thousands of times. It's why I'm here to help guide you through these next steps. Most people don't be like most people and lose out by waiting for rates to crash, right? The good news is we can secure market rates today and protect you from future increases. What happens next? Give them an idea. What's that roadmap? We commit our response to paper, send over for the review, and we are one step closer to home ownership. Looks like I didn't put anything here for what makes you say that. Help me
Right.
understand what's gotten you a bit nervous, right? We're kind of going back
Mm.
to this deal is not closed yet. Help me understand what's
Right.
gotten you a bit more nervous. Before you make up your mind, this is like that last ditch effort. Would it help if we went over the details one more time to make sure you're considering all the facts? Re-engage. Would it help if you had the option to refinance in a few years? Right? These are all just kind of like, let me get back in the game and start the conversation again. Hey, if I can work with the lender to get your payment down an extra $50, would you be comfortable moving forward? Small wins, right? We've got to break things down and figure out where the sale is.
Mhm.
Enough. Would 30 days be enough? These are little closes, right? Would 30 days be enough time to coordinate the move from your apartment to your new home? Right? Oh yeah, that would be enough. Okay, great. Boom, trial close. There you go. Just one more thing. If I could let, so now it's, I'm probably out, right? Like we're not doing this. This is the Columbo close. Just one more thing. You're out the door. Hold up your finger. Hold on. I got one last bright idea. If I could get the seller to reduce their price by 10K, would you be comfortable moving forward? Would you be comfortable writing an offer? Would you be comfortable? So maybe in context of this counter, hey, if we could work on it just a little bit, does that make a difference? A favor? Hey, wouldn't I don't know what the hell I wrote here. You wouldn't happen to know anybody looking to move from a high price city to San Jose to the Bronx? All right, I think we can cut it here. Just out of curiosity, would stop me. But it's an exercise, guys. And this did not take 5 minutes. Like I put some thought into this. And even as I'm presenting it now, it's like, oh, this was terrible in some areas. But it's just practice. And there's so many of these conversations that come up every day. Scenarios where you're talking with agents, you're talking with clients, buyers, sellers, you're talking with people at open houses that are coming in thinking about buying a house. There are so many opportunities to imagine conversations.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is we know what the conversations are.
Mhm.
All we have to do is say, all right, what are my top 10 conversations every day? And then you can start to map these things out. And like I said, it's a fun exercise that gets your brain moving in a direction that it's not necessarily trained to move in. And as you go through it, you'll be amazed, Versi, just like you said, when it happens in real time, you'll be amazed at how well you can recognize the moment and then apply some form of the framework. It won't be all of it. And it might sound funny at first, but you'll be amazed at how often this stuff comes up and then how much more prepared you feel during those conversations to have the right mindset, to be engaged, to ask the right questions and move the conversation forward. So I don't think we want you guys to do these question trees yet, but this is kind of the idea, right?
That's awesome.
Taking scenarios, building out question trees, and then perfecting them over time. And there'll be hundreds of iterations because a conversation is a two-way street. It could be, you start it this way and you follow the path, you get it to God knows where.
Yeah.
Conversation one, a completely different destination conversation two. And that's the fun thing about it. You can map these things out in a ton of different ways.
Yeah, that's great, man. If I can be that prepared beforehand, it's just going to lead to, even if it don't work out right now, it's more than likely going to work out later for us.
Mhm.
Yeah. And you know what? And I'll tell you what,
Can't lose.
the funny thing about this scenario is, and Michael will laugh about this, Wally, the very next day, Michael and I were chatting and we're trying to get him to re-engage. And Michael gives him a call. And Wally was pretty damn adamant about these people being completely gun shy with the market, walking away, gonna hit the brakes, pause button. Very next day, he gets Wally on the phone. Hey, Wally, this other offer that we're working with, doesn't look like we're going to be able to put that together. What do you think about? And I think we're going to go at him with a lower price or something that was a little softer. And Wally's response was, Michael, we wrote an offer on another place. We just got into contract.
Wow.
So we got sold on that conversation.
Right.
And that's one of the conversations that we're going to map out for sure, because had we done a better job of diving in with Wally, we could have at least uncovered that was false.
Right.
And really gotten to their true worry, true concern. And whether we got over that hump or not, we'll never know.
Yeah.
But he fed us a load of BS and we took it.
Yep.
And they were in contract the very next day. So here we are thinking Wally didn't have control of his clients. We just didn't have control of Wally.
Yep, exactly. Good stuff. Well, let's do some more practice tomorrow. We'll try to keep it a bit more concise from the 9:30 to 10 time, and yeah, share some more question trees, start practicing building some new ones. We can even just like do a live example too of like building one right there on a scenario. So you can just kind of see how that could unfold to stoke conversation, and then practicing it. It's really neat to see it unfolded when people practice it, and you can see how the dynamics shift and change when you ask these kind of questions and people start providing answers, and it provides a lot of clarity.
And I think the great thing about it, and we saw it firsthand, is it gives you an opportunity to be humble, right? As a newer agent, it's easy to be humble, right? Because you know what you don't know. For some seasoned agents, and this was very apparent at the workshop, 20 years in, 30 years in, 5 years in, rock stars, you feel like you got it. And it's tough to humble yourself to a point where you say, just teach me like I'm a newborn little baby, like I know nothing. And I'm gonna take everything that you say, and I'm gonna have open eyes and open ears and an open heart, and I'm gonna take it like I've never heard it before, and I'm gonna run with it. It's tough to do, and it was very comical at times to see people try to put things into practice in a way that was maybe outside of the scope of the training, and be humbled very quick by Phil Jones himself in front of, a few hundred people. Bring
Yes.
them right back down to earth. So I say all that to say, I know we're not going to have any issues with you guys, and hopefully nobody in our office. But my biggest advice would be to do exactly what a new baby would do. Just
Yeah.
learn.
Yeah.
Just take it for what it is.
Play
Don't
with
come
it.
in with any preconceived notions. Play with it. Have fun with it. Try it on for size. Mess it up and just laugh and say, man, I really messed that one. That was terrible. It's okay.
Yeah.
Because the more we go through it, the better we're going to get in. And if we act like we got it all, then we're just fooling ourselves.
Man, that's exactly the attitude and the way that I came to the real estate industry, with that attitude of just, a new baby, learn everything, a little bit. But I have to tell you, being in the car business for 33 years and as a general sales manager, that's not the way I was in the car business. But
I believe that.
you know what I'm saying? And but I went through enough in 33 years where you get humbled at some point, where you start to understand that, you don't have it all figured out. Your way isn't always the best way. And you just have to open up again and be willing to start all over. And
Yep.
that was the attitude that I brought to the real estate business. And that's why it's just, hey, let's just do the work one day at a time.
Exactly.
Good share
Awesome.
verse.
All right, I gotta get going, guys.
Okay, guys.
Thanks, Michael. See you guys.
All right.